Mars 160 coming up next.
By the way, there's a book you want to read. Okay. It's my pleasure to introduce, some of the members of the Mars 160 crew and also the principal investigator of the mission. So we have here Shannon Rupert, who is the manager of the Mars Desert Research Station program overall, and she also served as the principal investigator of this mission, which included both activity at the Mars Desert Research Station and the Flashline Mars Arctic Research Station. And then we have members of the crew here. This is not the entire crew. There are several other members, some of whom participated in both parts of the mission, and some of whom in either the desert or the Arctic only. What we have over on the far right is Yasuki from Japan. We have Anastasia Stepanova from Russia. We have Paul Knightley from the United States, and Alexander Manchiot from France. And Alexander was the commander in the Arctic, and Paul was the commander in the desert. And then there are several other people who are not here. John Clark from Australia was in both parts of the mission. Annalee, Beatty from Australia was in the desert part of the mission. Claude Michel was from Quebec, was in the desert part of the mission. Am I leaving some? And Anushri Srinivasa from India, so was in both parts of the mission. She's not here. So we had representatives on this mission from around 4 continents, and truly representative of humanity coming together to explore Mars. And this mission had many other aspects. I'll let the panelists describe it to you in view of the fact that it was both in the Arctic and the desert, and why we did that. But this was an extraordinary mission. It's the longest mission at Flashline, in the desert. It was one of the longest missions at Flashline, and it did something extraordinary because we had not been at the Flashline Mars Arctic Station with a full mission since 2009. That station, we had briefly visited it in 2013, so the last time anyone was there was 4 years ago, and the last time there was a bona fide mission there was 8 years ago, and they reactivated the station. We now have our Arctic station back again. So, so in terms of what they did in that respect, that was a major step. It would take me too long to simply describe the various adversities they overcame, but suffice to say, they overcame them, and here they are. So, take it.
Thank you.
Good morning. I get to speak first. There's 3 things I want you guys to keep in mind. We're going to try to go through years of work in about 20 minutes so that we can get some good questions going and a discussion going. But it's kind of complicated, so hang in there with us. This was not an isolation mission. It was a sustained field campaign with a simulation aspect. So our science, and in particular our field science, was the most important aspect of the mission. It was an operational mission, not a technology mission. So you're not going to see millions of dollars of really dazzling technology on display in our slides. And also remember, we just got back. So you're not going to see a whole lot of results from the 22 research projects that we had. You'll have to wait till next year to do that. So, I really can't talk and click at the same time, so sorry. As you know, we have two beautiful research stations, the Mars Desert Research Station in Utah and Flashline Station in the Arctic. These are amazing facilities and a great resource for our research projects, and sometimes we take them for granted. In 2013, we proposed a year-long mission to the Arctic, and we had difficulties getting it funded. In the meantime, we had gone through crew selection and selected 21 finalists, of which one crew 143, if anybody wants to go online and check it out, was pretty much selected as the main team to go to the Arctic. Funding issues, problems continued, and we were terrified that we were going to lose this exceptional crew that we had. So, in 2014, you guys all remember the NASA study with the Kelly brothers, one staying on Earth and one staying on the ISS. Well, they were twins and we had twin stations. So I said, hey, we have two stations, they're twins, let's do our own twin study. And so the main purpose of these missions was to look at science return in two realistic Mars analog field sites and determine where we were getting the bang for our buck. So everybody thinks that Flashline is romantic and wonderful and isolated and you know, dramatic. Obviously, I'm a little bit more partial to MDRS. And I wanted to kind of say, hey, this station, as good as it is as a training station, also has an amazing capacity to do real research. So we rounded up our crew. 4 of them are from the original crew that we selected because some of them couldn't do things. There was some shifting around. And we proceeded with our mission. Remember that on Devon Island, you have a true Mars analog. It's an extreme, it's an extreme environment, and it's also an impact crater. We've discovered, oops, thank you, go back. See, can't talk and click at the same time. Not touching anymore. We found out over the years that MDRS, with each robotic mission to Mars, is a more and more realistic Mars geologic analog than we'd anticipated even when we first put the station up. It differs spatially and temporally, but we see exactly the same processes we see on Mars. So with those two backgrounds, we launched a 6-month mission with an amazing crew, and they'll share a little bit of what life was like over the 6 months and many years that we trained for this mission.
Hello. Okay, so I will talk about our daily life. Here's the crew, people who are missing. And let's start. Okay, so I don't know why, but many people think that all we do in simulation is fighting and getting bored. Yes, and you can see at the slide what other options, who, you know, thinks what. But I will tell you that we're very busy. At MDRS mission, most of the time we were writing reports and of course doing the science. At FMARS we didn't have good internet connection, and so there were less reports and more science. I'm just going to show you how the station looked so you might understand what we've been doing there. So the first lower deck, it's where EVA proceeds. Where we prepare for EVAs and work on engineering projects, exercise. And upstairs is our main zone where we're hanging out, and we have 6-7 sleeping quarters. Yep. Okay. Just to show you more. Yeah, I'll be quick. Okay, on top, you can see the FMARS, how it looks inside. And the bicycles, it's also FMARS. So it's the only place or the only gym in the world when you can exercise with the view to Houghton crater, which is 39 million years old. So that's just really cool. I love to do that. Yeah. So how did we start our dates? Usually wake up at 7 and we have the briefing. Then we check our emails and proceed EVAs. EVAs usually took like 4 hours, maybe sometimes more. Cook lunch from dehydrated food, which is also a challenge. And then we write a lot of reports. And yeah, we proceed with our projects. So here you can see some of the projects that we did at MDRS, but we couldn't do it on FMARS. It's bioregenerative life support system, so we could have some fresh salad by the end of the mission. But the rest, it was all dehydrated. And I will tell you, if you have a lot of creativity, you can make it work. Yes, and sometimes we had crazy dishes, like red water. Yeah, that's the name, or cabbage tower, but it was fun. So yeah, this is our way of entertaining ourselves. And I think my part is done. So Paul Knightley will tell you about science.
All right, so I'm going to do my best to try and talk about what we did science-wise in just a few minutes. So excuse me if I'm a little bit brief and just kind of breeze through this. So obviously, as Shannon mentioned, our field science and human factors research were the main components. This was a very science-driven mission, and so those took first priority in many respects. And so that was divided, the field science at least, was divided into, there we go, into two main areas, biological science and geological science. So for our biological research, as we have on the next couple of slides, the primary focus was looking for extreme life forms that could potentially have lived on Mars in the past or could even still be living there today, including looking for halophiles and hypoliths, which are rock-dwelling organisms, as well as documenting the diversity of other plant species that live in Utah, as well as up on Devon Island, as seen in the bottom two pictures, looking at lichens and various flower species in and around FMARS. One of the common strains of biological research was looking for halophiles, which live underneath and coexist with gypsum samples, and that was something that we were able to actually look at both at MDRS and FMARS, and those samples are still being examined right now by our biological team on Earth. And then from a geological science standpoint, at MDRS and FMARS, we looked at stromatolite fossils, which, when we're talking about potential life that may have existed on Mars in the past, stromatolites or layers of algae are actually some of the best analogs that we have here on Earth that we could be looking for on Mars. And so you can see that in the bottom left or right-hand corner, some of the stromatolite fossils that we found on Devon Island. And then unique to Devon Island is the periglacial environment, which is very similar to what we see across much of Mars with permafrost existing across most of the island and creating features called patterned ground, which has also been observed and documented extensively on Mars. So when we study patterned ground here on Earth, we're actually learning a lot about patterned ground on Mars as well. And so that was the focus of my research while we were up there, and just monitoring how that changed over time and documenting the just diversity of patterned ground that exists on Devon Island. And then for our human factors and psychological research that we looked at, we did so we did psychological testing throughout the mission to measure the isolation aspect of both phases of the mission. And then we also did a twin EVA study that examined the differences between suited and non-suited EVAs to gauge what our efficiency was out in the field. Are we more or less efficient wearing spacesuits, and how does that impact the overall science return of the mission? And one of the more exciting things that we did find that we can share with you now in terms of discoveries was finding a species of spider which is native to the Arctic but previously hadn't been documented on Devon Island. And so that was a very exciting find. I think Alex found that with his laser sharp vision. The spider's very small. So I think with that, I'll pass it off to, I think, Alex. There's just a roundup of it. And he can talk about engineering.
Thank you, Paul. So a quick word about engineering. As Shannon said, no fancy stuff because we were not rich. Anyway, so my project is related to spacesuit. I wanted the analog astronaut to be more interactive with its system on the back during EVA. So this is my project on the top. We had also biogenerative system. Well, it's a fancy word for aquaponic system. For growing plants, we had a nice salad at the end of our MDRS part of the missions. So that was nice. Along with that, lots of sensor to determine how much time we spend in front of the plants taking care of them. And for the next part of the engineering, I will let Yusuke explain better because that is tough. I'll come back in a few minutes.
All right, I'm short guy, so I will. Okay, these are my project. My background is architect. I'm space architect, but I want to say me as a first field architect because I also have experience in Antarctica in 15 months and also in aerospace camp. So that kind of field of view, we need to understand how the human can work in that kind of harsh environment with spacesuits or with thick gloves. So these yellow and blue one is a dome project. It's a design I designed, and this dome is a good tool to understand how the human can assemble the tiny kind of assemble works. And also these dome was tested with Nepali kids because this dome is basically designed for the Nepali victims for after the earthquake. And so that's that kind of testing stuff is dome project. And the bottom one was like a kind of octopus, Anastasia. She has eight. Yeah, that one is also the understanding a human factor for wearing spacesuits. And there's a one 3D scanning one, and also the down part is the 360 used with taking the photo by 360 camera for how do we say scanning the landscape by 360 camera for I take the photo for each 50 meters to mapping a landscape by 360 camera. So that project is for me how understanding the difference between a human eyes view and also a robot eyes view, because we need to collaborate with robot and humans. So we have to understand we have different eyes. Robot has their own habit. So after we understand the habit of technology, so we can, finally we can do the real collaborate. So next, sorry. And also, yeah, wait.
This one, yeah. Very quick.
Yeah, very quick. So this is oh wait, sorry. Yeah, this is a good example for collaboration between crews. This one is collaborate with me and Paul, and prepared many equipment for the scanning and taking stereogram photos. But that kind of tool, I want to help the EBA for human EBA works at the EBA. And Paul was inspired with Paul inspired from that kind of stuff. So that's a kind of, sorry, it's a good collaboration between the different backgrounds. So, all right.
So, as the commander of both missions, not like Robert said previously, what can I say? Mars 160 rocks, right? So I'm pleased to say that our mission were successful, both in science and collaboration and operational point of view. But there is two implicit objectives for any human mission, which are everyone come back alive and the crew stick together. And I'm pleased to say that we both did it. So, yeah. We are explorers. Maybe the question you have in mind right now is what comes next. Well, with Shannon and a few other crew members, we're talking about what should be done after our mission, and we're talking about a triplet mission would involve FMARS, MDRS, like our mission, but also involving Mars Oz, which is the Mars Society, Austrian Mars Society base camp, or a 6-month expedition at MDRS. But obviously, all of us are looking for a new adventure because this mission, as great as it was, is just the beginning for us. So, okay, that's again the crew. I'd like to thank all of them because they were very good people to live with. They are kind of my family now, so that we are sharing the same feelings about each other. So yeah, we definitely were a good crew all together. But we must not to forget that we were not alone. We had many people on Earth that supported us. You have a short list of the most important person that supported this program. And like also to thanks the major fundings of these expeditions, which are the Mars Society and NHK, which is the Japanese national TV broadcast. Thank you very much.
You take questions?
I'm thrilled to see that you discovered spiders on Mars. I was wondering, any chance Ziggy Stardust showed up?
No.
Actually, we can run over on questions because we're waiting for the Director General of the United Arab Emirates Space Program to connect via Skype. And if he doesn't, we've got a little extra time. So,
Jerry.
Real quickly, are you candidates for Mars?
Yeah, of course. We would love to go to real Mars.
It depends on the people, on the crew.
I mean, not everyone wants to go to Mars in our crew, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll stay here and take all their glory.
Well, and Anastasia here is also a Mars One candidate, so.
But yeah.
I'm scared to go into Mars.
And I wanted to say thank you. Also, somewhat related, I think it's significant that we're getting close to 200 mostly 2-week missions, Mars simulation. I remember just over the last couple of years, seeing the U.S. and seeing the Russian simulation, and they got a lot of press. I don't know why we don't get more. We've done so much.
Actually, we get tons of press at MDRS. for me, you know, the hermit, it's a little overwhelming sometimes. So yeah, we're very fortunate in that there are a lot of people interested in what we do. And if you just Google MDRS, a ton of stuff will come up. Oh, Carol, I'm afraid.
Okay, I've kind of two questions, one of which is engineering, the other which is science. From the engineering point of view, you said, well, we really are very poor. I'm just, seems like just the opportunity to test your stuff in this environment, if you put the word out there to industry or academia, you'd have lots of stuff coming in. I'm just wondering how much outreach you did for that. So that's the first question. Okay. The second question is, I'm really intrigued to hear that you found stromatolites. And where did you find them? And are they, did they grow up in the lake deposit after the crater formed, or do you think they're older than that? They predate the crater.
Well, I'll answer the stromatolite question first. The stromatolites that we found, I can't speak for them really at MDRS because I wasn't involved with that phase of the mission, but on Devon Island, the stromatolites that we found are about 450 million years old. So they're not, they're a far cry from the oldest stromatolites that you can find on Earth, which are several billion years old. But they did exist in an ocean environment at that point in time. And they were just in deposits that we found kind of in the sidewall of the crater.
From the engineering project, the question was, we didn't do enough outreach to come on board more stuff. That was the question, right?
Well, I'm asking if you did.
Oh, no. Actually, well, you know, preparing the mission is very overwhelming, and we prepare more the mission than, you know, trying to put some engineering stuff together, so.
Let me address this as the PI. A lot of times, the biggest challenge in a mission, and we've seen this in the past, is that your collaborative effort falls apart during the mission because people want to save their own stuff. If things go bad, it's like, wait a minute, you know, it becomes, I want my stuff done, and to the detriment of everybody else's stuff. And so one of the focuses of this mission was very deliberately picking people who had connections to each other. So if you look at the crew, for example, John Clark and I have known each other forever. Not that we're that old, but you know. And so we made interlaced connections between both the Earth-based expert team and the crew to make sure that we had this cohesiveness during the mission that in a lot of other missions that I've been involved in has frankly fallen apart. In the future, yes, the triplet mission, part of the triplet mission is to completely, it's to create huge collaborations with institutional collaborations, and to, as opposed to this one, which was kind of an intimate, let's see if we can do this kind of thing. Does that make sense? And we did have Heather's project, which we should talk about later because I don't know what happened to her, which was Heather Hava, a graduate student who is the expert behind the smart pots, those small bioregenerative systems. We had her on board at MDRS. Her project was highly technical, and we didn't feel that we could support it completely in the Arctic. But we did get really good, data and got her project started in that way. But it was more a focus on just making the mission work, and also field science. So.
I want to add one more thing. About the DOME project, Nepali people is very proud about, Nepal doesn't have any kind of space agency, but the kids are very proud of now. Our, knowledge helped the astronaut working in that kind of environment. So maybe it's a good inspired for the other country. So it's a good outreach, I think.
I was curious if you learned anything about Earth, like maybe particularly in geology, that surprised you or perhaps was not known, and also about your relationship with the general science communities. Do you have respect for the work that you're doing in this environment?
So for the science research, we're still going through all of our data. At least for me, I was only involved with the Arctic portion, so my research is still very fresh, so I'll be looking over that here in the coming months. So with, I guess as far as the results, the intent for all of the science research that we've done is to go through our data and get most of it published, or at the very least presented at scientific conferences. I have the intent, hopefully, to present some, at least in a poster presentation at the Lunar and Planetary Sciences Conference next spring in Houston. So we will be sharing this work at large with the scientific community and getting their feedback from what we've learned. And hopefully there is something that we've found and that we'll be able to share with folks and just add to that body of knowledge.
Also, as someone who's been doing this for a very long time, my mother used to be very ashamed to say what I did, and now she proudly pronounces what I do. So Mars analog science has come a long way in the past 2 decades, and I think it's a very, very respected and growing part of science.
Hi, my name is Bob Barboza, and I'm with Kids Talk Radio Science, and we just recently put up a Russian channel. So we want to communicate with Russia.
Of course, thank you.
Big time.
Right.
I will be happy.
And I want to go on the record as saying I am working with the Russians. So
It's not scary, right?
that's right, and it's not scary. So here's my comment.
You don't know Anastasia.
We have, right, there you go. We have figured out a way that we could get to Mars and get it fully funded. My role is that of an astrosociologist. And the way we could get to Mars is we are going to convince Donald Trump that he will be the first astronaut on Mars. And I'm going to get the Republicans and the Democrats to pay for this. So,
And I think I should convince Putin that he should be a first cosmonaut on Mars, and then that's it.
Well, there it is. The Mars
We'll send them both
Society
and not
has
Aerobreak.
and then if we could get our good friend, the co-pilot in North Korea, we could solve all of these problems. But seriously, I have to accomplish this. If we could get high school kids in the USA to get some sort of a plug-in when you guys go to the space station, we would be able to channel that. I'm going to do a session at 1 o'clock today, and I hope my good friend from Russia can attend that session. I'm going to have a fully autonomous humanoid robot that I would like to have go in my place to Mars and to your location. So if anybody is willing to take a fully autonomous robot that could report back to the students in the USA when you're on these exotic missions, I would appreciate that. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, this is an international crew, and you spent quite a bit of time together. Could you comment on terms of communication, particularly dealing with foreign languages and what languages you communicated and how well you, was there a language barrier in your teamwork and what kind of role that played?
I'll just start off with that. At least from my perspective, I didn't think that language was really that much of a barrier. I think a large part of the crew's success is that we're all fairly self-starting individuals and willing to go out of our way to try and collaborate with one another. And so whatever cultural differences might have existed, and there were certainly a few, especially at the start of the mission. Those were quickly worked through as we all got on the same page.
Yeah, if totally agree on what Paul just said. If I may add something, I think the cultural differences among the crew is what makes great crew and what makes us work really well among each other. Because we have lots of respect to each other. We don't assume, we don't take something for granted from each other because we are not, we are not sharing the same culture, not the same language. So it makes us more, it forces us to communicate more between each other, and that makes lots of interaction among the crew, which bonds the crew like a team.
I also want to point out that we did a lot of training. We knew each other before. I think that that's important. It might have been completely different had we thrown us all together and quickly did this mission.
Is there any expectation in the future that there will be representatives from the continents of Africa and South America in this program? I don't see anybody from those continents. Is there some reason for that?
No. No, there isn't. We have many South American crews at MDRS, so there's a huge Latin American presence in Mars analog work. There are remarkably few applicants, and I've yet to have a crew to propose a mission from Africa, and would love that.
Egypt is in Africa.
Yeah. We don't have an... We've had Egyptians, but not an Egyptian crew. That's true.
What are some of the qualifications for the crew to be selected for, I guess, previous missions or future missions as well?
Oh, that's going to come to me. That's a hard one. One of the things that I've been, I think that's changed over time. I think originally when we started doing this, almost 20 years ago, we wanted fit, strong, young individuals. That was kind of, if you heard Loretta's talk yesterday, she was talking about, the new right stuff. And I think originally we thought that's what we needed. Lately we've realized there's a lot of other considerations in this type of a mission. One of the reasons this particular crew, so of those 21 finalists for this mission, we had 3 crews that came to MDRS for 2 weeks each. We chose this particular crew, of which 3 of the members are here. Yusuke was on a different crew, because they were so collaborative with each other. We did some human factors study work on them. We used them as guinea pigs. And their collaboration was just amazing. And for me, as kind of I'm more comfortable with collaboration. So before we wanted, more military type, able to stay in a more structured command system. I think that's changed, and we see more and more. I no longer look for that in crews anymore. I don't necessarily look for the commander's going to save everybody, I'm not going to say what I wanted to say. And so, we have about 14 crews a year that go through MDRS. They're all very, very different. And sometimes what you see on paper, and you think, oh my God, this crew is like magic, right? And then you get a crew that's not so magic on paper, and yet they're the ones that come and take it away at MDRS. So, and Robert.
I just want to comment on the crew selection process, since I played a leading role in that. What we did was we initially put out an open call for volunteers for the crew. We got 200 applications. Okay. We went through them, just reading through the applications. We down selected to 60 that we thought were very promising. we asked those 60 to send in a video of themselves talking about their ideas for the mission and why they thought this was important and what they would do and what they could bring to it. And then from those 60, we selected 21 to comprise 3 test crews at MDRS. These were crews of 7 each. In some cases, all 7 did show. One case, there was only 6 that we figured that would happen. So 6 is what we needed. So we had 3 test crews that each did a 2-week rotation at MDRS. And the best of those, the one that performed the best, the one that was the most cohesive, gung-ho, and capable, was crew number 143, of which most of these crew members were members of. And so we decided that we would do crew 143 as the basis of the mission, as we selected them as a team. Now, what happened was there was some time lag between when we did that and when we were able to mobilize the resources to undertake this mission. And so a couple of those couldn't make it, and we drew some people from some of the other candidate crews to fill it out. And there was initially a little difficulty with that, of bringing people into a cohesive team and adding them to it. That's not ideal. But we made it work. They made it work, put it that way. And so we had a very strong team in the desert for the 80-day desert mission. And then once again, we had to add someone. Well, no, not quite.
We had 2 of the original team do.
Well, I got it. Okay. Paul Knightley didn't make, who was in the initial crew 143, but couldn't be in the initial desert mission, was brought back into the Arctic mission. So he was part of the initial crew 143 team. He was not a stranger.
And
but
so
anyway,
was
my point is this, that this is a team sport. And I think that when it comes time to actually choose the crew for Mars, the real crew that actually flies to Mars, what they ought to do, whoever's doing this, ought to set up maybe 3 high-fidelity stations in the Arctic or somewhere, pick 3 very promising candidate crews, and perhaps pick those 3 by competing them in earlier exercises against a broader array of teams, but then take the finalists, put them each in their own station, not close to each other, they're each on their own, task them to do a 6-month sustained program of field exploration while operating under Mars analog conditions to the greatest simulation severity possible, and then choose the team that does the best. Okay? Choose the best team. Don't choose it on the basis of individuals. That's what I think is the way to go. So we were able to approximate that process in this selection, and I think because we did approximate it reasonably well, we came out with a very strong team.
A quick question for the crew. Would you do it again, or will you do it again?
It's Jerry.
Ah, okay.
If I had to do the process all over again, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Same here.
Da.
Would you do it again?
Das possible.
Would you do it again?
Oh,
Again?
Yeah. Would you do it again?
This mission? Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'll say it for you.
Give me time.
Okay, I think last question here. While we're on the topic of team building, has lessons learned from other areas in our human experience, so I'm thinking sports specifically, of finding a team that would be successful in an endeavor. So for example, if anyone's seen the movie Miracle, the 1980 USA hockey team was comprised mostly of college kids, but it was obviously incredibly successful, something that nobody could say, you could say, foresaw. As you've seen these crews go through this process over and over again over time, what have you learned about building teams, either from your own experience or if you've taken those kinds of lessons from business or sports or otherwise? Does that make sense?
I don't compute either business or sports. Let's see. Do you guys? I mean, help me out, guys.
Oh, you're talking to a bunch of people up here who are not interested in sports, I guess. No, I think there are definitely some parallels between that, just in my own experiences doing that. I mean, when you are talking about a mission to Mars, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, I mean, from a technological and a science perspective, but certainly when you're talking about the actual crew and then their interactions with mission control, I mean, it becomes one of the largest team sports, really, that you can imagine. And so, as Robert was saying just a little bit ago, I mean, the best teams out on the field, regardless of what the sport may be, are the teams that are the most cohesive, where everyone knows what their role is, and I think also more importantly, know where their role stops and where somebody else's picks up. And I think, at least for our crew, that was, I think, a big part of our success, is that people did understand their limitations and you know, have a certain degree of humility in allowing somebody else to come in where maybe they would be a better fit for a particular task. And I think you see that in different professional sports, where people don't try to outstep their bounds too much and actually interact as a team. So,
Yeah,
no ego. Yes.
Want to add that I think it's impossible to go to space and have a success if you're a quite selfish person. So you have to work as one organism, like as one human body, and that's what we've been doing. That's why the mission was successful. And of course, multitasking all the time, and just considering each other and be as less selfish as you can. Yep.
Shannon, what's next for MDRS? What's coming up?
Well, we have a full-filled season starting in November. I don't know. I don't know when you last visited MDRS, but it's grown enormously in the past year. We now have, I think, 6 buildings. We have a science lab. We have a beautiful greenhouse. That's going to be the focus of a lot of the institutional research this year. We have 14 crews from all over that'll be there through June. We're also having our first juried art show over Memorial Day weekend, so the end of May. We'll have IKEA's coming out to do some remodeling and maybe put together a pod of 6 more staterooms so that we could hold small seminars or larger crews. And we also have the URC at the end of June. So, and if anybody's interested, the end of October is our infamous work party. If you want to come out and hang out with us that last week before the crews start, we're looking for volunteers. It's a lot of hard labor this fall. We're putting in a rock foundation under kind of a rock wall around the hab. It's not really a foundation. Working on the tunnel and just some overall maintenance. So let me know if you want to come out. We do those work parties twice a year, hint, hint. If you can't make this one, come to the next one.
I'm wondering, when conflicts did arise, what methodologies did you use to work those out?
Russian stick. Joking. Yeah, we did. We had a couple of disagreements. Well, we just talk basically. If at some point the discussion is going too sentimental, you just we just stop there. We'll begin again tomorrow with fresh head, and usually it works. Yeah.
Sharing the table. We never give up to, we always stay, eat together on the same table. That kind of, it's a tiny thing, but that's very, very important. Eat same lunch at same time and share the conversation and laugh at each other.
So you didn't let anybody hide out, I take it?
And I think we are so lucky that everyone has a good sense of humor. It really helps. So yeah.
I'm sometimes I can't understand Alex.
Any other questions?
There is, yeah.
Oh, you got him?
So in Star Trek, you always had to have your leader, your science guy, your medical guy, your security guy. There were like, particular roles everyone had to fit. Do you envision that a team would have to be selected based upon those sorts of roles, or would you just pick a bunch of science folks or people who are willing to go through with, a couple years in space?
I think roles are important because it legitimates decisions that are taken. But I think the most important things for a crew to stay together, it's not the roles, it's just how they work. So roles are partly involved in this process, but as Yusuke said, there are little things in life that makes a crew bound together, and that's completely independent of the roles. We stick together like a family. We, share the lunch, the dinner, breakfast, many things, and that makes us working very well into the field.
And just something I'll add to that, I think, as far as just having, some of those roles do need to be assigned, like with who's going to be the health and safety officer. I think what you look for crew selection is find people who are going to be able to meet the mission objectives. So, you have your engineers, pilots, scientists, that sort of thing. And then either through the selection process, find somebody who's already cross-trained in one of those other additional roles. So maybe you have a crew biologist who is also cross-trained in medical science and is able to handle first aid tasks, and you just go from there. And limit it to just a couple of very specific roles for each crew member, and try and, one of the things we tried to limit on, even on our mission, was the amount of cross-training that happened. So ideally, you'd probably have a crew, I guess this is just more my opinion than anything, you would have a crew where everyone has their, mission-specific role. So what are you going to do in terms of your research and, make the mission work, and then you've got your other side role, your health and safety officers and, EVA leads and that sort of thing.
You have to have a commander, and Alex was a really good one. The buck has to stop with somebody. I think that what surprised me about this crew is that the person who saved the day often wasn't the person who was in that particular role, which was really cool. It showed that they showed a lot of versatility in their ability to work together. From the science perspective, what we did deliberately is our non-science crew were cross-trained as science observers in the field. So if you took a scientist and a non-scientist out on an EVA, you could have, and they work together in different ways, and I'm not done analyzing the work, but basically they worked in different ways. Sometimes they worked completely as a team, where one assisted the non-scientist assisted the scientist. In other times, the non-scientist served as a scout who made the discoveries. So there were a number of different ways our non-science crew worked with the science crew. And since this mission was so science heavy, that was imperative. So the success of the science, the amount of science return that we got, was not dependent on our scientists, who are all very good, but also on our non-scientists who stepped into a role that they were unfamiliar with and added to the science return.
This has been fantastic. Thank you all for your time and effort.